Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, those of you that are new, and welcome back, those of you that aren't. Today, I've like to say that I've got a special treat for you. I wish I had continued reading this way back when. I wish I'd finished reading it. I'm going to start from the beginning. Excuse me, sipping my coffee. The book I will be reading from is called Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. You'll have to excuse my reading voice. I know it can be a little much sometimes. I've just finished reading John Eldridge's new work, Wild at Heart. I was deeply moved by this excellent book. I believe it is the best, most insightful book I have read in at least 5 years. In at least, what? Oh, yeah. There was an extra word there that didn't make sense to me. I plan to read it again through the summer. Only this next time, much more slowly. Eldridge shares splendid ideas that he has stated so creatively and thankfully, free of cliché. New vistas will appear in the reader's minds as they take the wonderful journey of reading this book. His insights on identifying the wound, facing it head on, and then staying with it until a healing transpires will be immensely helpful to many folks. Every man and his wife, and every mother of a boy, should really read this book. Charles R. Swindoll, June 28, 2001. Wild at Heart, Discovering the Secret of a Man's Soul. For Samuel, Blaine, and Luke, I love your warrior hearts. You definitely have what it takes. Acknowledgements. My deep thanks to those who have helped me climb this mountain. Sam, Blaine, Jenny, Erin, Morgan, Cherie, Julie, Gary, Lay, Travis, Sally, and Stacy. Brian and Kyle at Thomas Nelson. The Thursday Night Poker Group, and all those who have been praying for me near and far. Brent, for teaching me more about what it means to be a man than anyone else ever has. And Craig, for taking up the sword. Introduction. I know. I almost want to apologize. Dear Lord, do we really need another book for men? Nope. We need something else. We need permission permission to be what we are, men made in God's image, permission to live from the heart, and not from the lists of should and ought to that has left so many of us tired and bored. Most messages for men ultimately fail. The reason is simple. They ignore what is deep and true to a man's heart, his real passions, and simply try to shape him up through various forms of pressure. Quote, "This is the man you ought to be. This is what a good husband, father, Christian, churchgoer ought to do." Fill in the blanks from there. He is reasonable, sensitive, disciplined, faithful, diligent, dutiful, etc. Many of these are good qualities. That these messengers are well-intentioned, I have no doubt. But the road to hell, as we remember, is paved with good intentions. That they are a near total failure should seem obvious by now. No. Men need something else. They need a deeper understanding of why they long for adventures and battles and a beauty, and why God made them just like that. And they need a deeper understanding of why women long to be fought for, to be swept up into the adventure, and to be the beauty. For that is how God made them as well. So I offer this book, not as the 7 steps to being a better Christian, but as a safari of the heart to recover a life of freedom, passion, and adventure. I believe it will help men get their heart back, and women as well. Moreover, it will help women to understand their men and help them live the life they both want. That is my prayer to you. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while doing greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who have never known neither victory nor defeat. Teddy Roosevelt. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men take it by force. Matthew 11:12, NASB. Chapter 1. Wild at Heart. The heart of a man is like deep water. Proverbs 20:5. New King James Version. The spiritual life cannot be made suburban, it is always frontier, and we who live in it accept, must accept, and even rejoice that it remains untamed. Howard Macy. I want to ride to the ridge where the west commences. I can't look at hobbies, and I can't stand fences. Don't fence me in. Cole, Cole Porter, don't fence me in. At last, I am surrounded by wilderness. The wind in the top of the pines behind me sounds like the ocean. Waves are rushing in from the great blue above, cresting upon the ridge of the mountain I have climbed. Somewhere in the Sasquatch range of central Colorado, spreading out below me, the landscape is a sea of sagebush for mile after lonesome mile. Zane Grey immortalized it as the purple sage. But most of the year, it's more of a silver gray. This is the kind of country you could ride across for days on horseback without seeing another living soul. Today, I am on foot. Though the sun is shining this afternoon, it will not warm above 30 here near the central divide. And the sweat I worked up scaling this face is now making me shiver. It is late October, and winter is coming on. In the distance, nearly 100 miles south by southwest, the San Juan Mountains are already covered in snow. The aroma of the pungent sage still clings to my jeans, and it clears my head as I gasp for air. In notably short supply at 10,000 feet, I am forced to rest again, even though I know at each pause broadens the distance between me and my quarry. Still, the advantage has always been his. Though the tracks I found this morning were fresh, only a few hours old, that holds little promise. A bull elk can easily cover miles of rugged country in that amount of time, especially if he is wounded or on the run. The wapiti, as the Indians called him, is one of the most elusive creatures that have left that we have left in the lower 48. They are the ghosts. They are the ghost kings of the high country, more cautious and wary than deer and more difficult to track. They live at higher elevations and travel farther in a day. Oh, they live at higher elevations and travel farther in a day than nearly any other game. The bulls especially seem to carry a sixth sense to human presence. A few times I've gotten close. The next moment they were gone, vanishing silently into the aspen groves so thick you wouldn't have believed a rabbit could get through. It wasn't always this way. For centuries, elk lived out on the prairies, grazing together on the rich grasses in vast numbers. In the spring of 1805, Meriwether Lewis described passing herds lolling about in the thousands as he made his way in search of a northwest passage. At times, the curious wandered so close he could throw sticks at them, like bucolic dairy cows, blocking the road. But by the end of the century, westward expansion had pushed the elk high into the Rocky Mountains. Now they are elusive, hiding out in timberline like outlaws until heavy snow forces them down for the winter. If you would seek them now, it is on their terms, in forbidding haunts well beyond the reach of civilization. And that is why I come, and why I linger here still, letting the old bull get away. My hunt, as you see, actually has very little to do with elk. I knew that before I came. There's something else I'm after, out here in the wild. I'm searching for an even more elusive prey, something that can only be found through the help of wilderness. I am looking for my heart. I'm gonna stop there for now. Actually, you know what? Let's keep going. Eve was created in the lush beauty of Eden's garden. But Adam, if you'll remember, was created outside the garden, in the wilderness. In the record of our beginnings, the second chapter of Genesis makes it clear. Man was born in the outback, from the untamed part of creation. Only afterward is he brought into Eden. And ever since then, boys have never been at home indoors, and men have had an insatiable longing to explore. We long to return. It's when most men come alive. As John Muir said, when a man comes to the mountains, he comes home. The core of a man's heart is undomesticated, and that is good. Quote, I am not alive in an office, as one North Face ad has it. I am not alive in a taxi cab. I am not alive on a sidewalk. Amen to that. The conclusion? Never stop exploring. My gender seems to need a little encouragement. It comes naturally, like our innate love of maps. In 1260, Marco Polo headed off to find China. And in 1967, when I was 7, I tried to dig a hole straight through from our backyard with my friend Danny Wilson. We gave up at about 8 feet, but it made a great effort. Hannibal crosses his famous Alps, and there comes a day in a boy's life when he first crosses the street and enters the company of the great explorers. Scott and Amundsen race for the South Pole. Perry and Cook vie for the North. And when last summer I gave my boys some loose change and permission to ride their bikes down to the store to buy a soda, you'd have thought I'd given them a charter to find the equator. Magellan, 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 Magellan sails due west around around the tip of South America, despite warnings that he and his crew will drop off the end of the earth, and Huck Finn heads off down the Mississippi, ignoring similar threats. Powell follows the Colorado into the Grand Canyon, even though, no, because no one has done it before, and everyone is saying it can't be done. And so my boys and I stood on the bank of the Snake River in the spring of '98, feeling that ancient urge to shove off. Snowmelt was high that year, unusually high, and the river had overflowed its banks and was surging through the trees on both sides. Out in the middle of the river, which is crystal clear in late summer, but that day looked like chocolate milk. Logs were floating down, large tangles of branches, bigger than a car. And who knows what else. High and muddy and fast. The snake was forbidding. No other rafters could be seen. Did I mention it was raining? But we had a brand new canoe, and the paddles were in hand. And sure, I've never floated down the Snake in a canoe, or any other river for that matter. But what the heck? We jumped in and headed off into the unknown, like Livingstone, plunging into the interior of dark Africa. Adventure, with all its requisite danger and wilderness, is a deeply spiritual longing written into the soul of a man. The masculine heart needs a place where nothing is prefabricated, modular, non-flat, Ziploc, franchised, online, microwavable, where there are no deadlines, no cell phones, or committee meetings, where there is room for the soul, where finally the geography around us corresponds to the geography in our heart. Look at the heroes of the biblical text. Moses does not encounter the living God at a mall. He finds him, or is found by him, somewhere out in the deserts of Sinai. Sinai, sorry, a long way from the comforts of Egypt. The same is true of Jacob, who has his wrestling match with God not in the living room sofa, but out in the Wadi, somewhere east of Jabbok, in Mesopotamia. Where did the great prophet Elijah go to recover his strength? To the wild, as did John the Baptist and his cousin Jesus, who was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Whatever else those explorers were after, they were also searching for themselves. Deep in deep in a man's heart are some fundamental questions that simply cannot be answered at the kitchen table. Who am I? What am I made of? What am I destined for? Here's a fear that keeps a man at home, where things are neat and orderly and under his control. But the answers to his deepest questions cannot be found on television or in the refrigerator. Out there on the burning desert sands, lost in a trackless waste, Moses received his life's mission and purpose. He is called up into something much bigger than he ever imagined, much more serious than the CEO or Prince of Egypt. Under foreign stars and the dead of night, Jacob received his new name, his real name. No longer is he a shrewd business negotiator, but now he is one who wrestles with God. The wilderness trial of Christ is, at its core, a test of his identity. If you are who you think you are, if a man is ever to find out who he is and what he is here for, he has to make that journey himself. He has got to get his heart back. Page 6. That's where I'll be stopping. Thank you for your time, and I hope you come back for more.